So continuing on with our macro building, let's see how burp macros can help us to defeat CAPTCHA puzzles. So a quick review of CAPTCHA. This is a mechanism that's used to help applications distinguish between humans and machines. Now, an application generally mitigates the threat of automated or brute force attacks by placing CAPTCHA boxes in the form of a specific request that's submitted by the user. Not only do these CAPTCHA puzzles try to determine if a human is at the keyboard, but they also slow down the rate at which requests can be sent to the web server. So in this demo, we're going to take a look at how we can use burp macros to help us solve CAPTCHA puzzles. You will be using a custom application that I've made available to you in the exercise files. In this demo, we're going to look at how we can create a macro to help us solve CAPTCHA puzzles. So once you deploy the WAR file that I gave you to Tomcat version 7, what you'll want to do is go to the greeting page, which will have a simple link here. You're going to click that link, and you will see a CAPTCHA form. In this get of calling the page, we will have the answer to the CAPTCHA of the previous submit. But in our case, we've not submitted the form yet, so let's go ahead and do that. I'm going to go ahead and solve this one. Okay, and then I'm going to go ahead and return to the form again, and I can see that the answer is there that I just typed in on the previous form. When we look at the burp traffic, we can verify that this response shows us the answer to the previous CAPTCHA puzzle. So using that information, what we can do is now go ahead and create our macro that can help us to solve these CAPTCHA puzzles. So the first thing that I'd like for you to do is create a test scenario. So go ahead and take this post and send that to the repeater. Now what I'd like you to do is X this answer out, just put some dummy characters. We have the wrong CAPTCHA value entered. So now let's create our macro that can help us to solve this puzzle. We're going to add a new rule. We're going to call this rule CAPTCHA solver. Now under the rule action, we're going to run a post request macro, and that's mainly because we need the macro to run after the request has been sent in order to get the answer to the puzzle. Now what I'm going to do is I'm going to grab the previous get and the post, and I'm going to use those two steps in my macro. So let's click OK. Let's rename our macro to solve puzzle. Now for this get, let's configure a particular value that we need, which the parameter name is going to be answer. So if you look at the actual post form, you'll see that that is the parameter name answer. So that's what we want to fill in with the value from our get request, or specifically from our get responses. So the answer that we want to grab is right here, and I'm going to select it like that. You can see that it gets populated automatically when I select that value. So I'm going to click OK and click OK. Now let's go to the post. For the post, we want to derive from the previous response. We want to derive the value for answer from our previous response, and that would be from that get. All right, let me go ahead and test the macro. I do receive an answer here, and if I look at that, I do get the confirmation that I defeated the challenge. So let's go ahead and click OK. and click OK. Now the only parameter that I want to update is going to be answer, so I want to add that to my rule. I also want to make sure that the final response is from my macro and not the additional transaction that may occur. So I've got that selected already. I'm going to click OK. Now let's talk about scope. I'm only testing this in the repeater, so I'm going to deselect everything else. I want to just choose the target tab for my scope. And I'm also going to open this session tracer. This is a really nice way to debug your macros as you run them. So let's go back to the repeater and let's go ahead and click go this time. Okay, and we get the success message that we defeated the CAPTCHA challenge. If we go to our session tracer, what we can see is that this is the rule that was applied, CAPTCHA solver. We did issue the current request, but then we ran the macro called solve puzzle. It processed this first JSP, and then it processed the second JSP with this derived answer. So that's a pretty cool way to debug your macros in order to see exactly what gets executed. I also showed you on the last video demo how to use this logger in order to basically capture the same thing. If you want to verify what steps are actually being called under the covers, you can use this logger as well. Now, the use case for this would be if you don't want to have to worry about solving CAPTCHA puzzles because, say, you're using Intruder and you instead want to focus on your payloads for finding SQL injection or cross-site scripting instead. So what you can do is set up the macro to solve all the puzzles for you so that as you send new requests, you can just focus on what your payload is.